Hey everybody, Kane here, and welcome to another video of Art of Conquest. In this one, we are going to talk about Armory. So people have asked me, what kind of Armory equipment should they use for, say, human or lich or any other race? Now, the thing about these equipments is that they are not race specific. Most of them are pretty much hero specific. Also depends what you're kind of raising, what you have, and what you're kind of using. So in my previous videos, I've spoken about that I've changed my mages into my rogues. And of course, I have changed a little bit of my armory in terms of that as well. So, what happened? I still use my Red Wolf's Brutal Shield as it is because it sort of still benefits a couple of gladiators. So, before we use it for lifesteal, a little bit more damage, and it helped Balrogs, sustain a little bit. Maybe your Burside gladiators also kind of benefited from it. But right now, pretty much it's only really Lee benefiting from it with the lifesteal, with the damage against melee heroes and stuff like that. So aside from that, I've checked most other shields, and I don't know if they really provide that much apart from the elephant shield. Now, what this one also can provide is a shield on two random allied melee unit squads. I think it says, troop units, but I think it's the squad in general because the buff itself shows on the entire squad, as far as I'm aware. Have not really used it though, so I cannot really guarantee. I just go by with what effect I see and where I see it. And of course, you can debuff like the enemy is hitting it by a pretty huge, say, debuff. 40% chance to suffer a 40% attack speed reduction, which is pretty huge. So, in the current, I guess, sense of PvP, it might be even smarter to use this particular, say, shield. Simply because Drac scales a lot with attack speed. Lee scales a lot with attack speed if they get your stall side. By having this, you're likely not going to be obliterated as quick. I mean, it's likely gonna buy just a couple of seconds longer. So I might be actually giving this a try in the next week or so. I didn't actually think it was that strong. I thought it was like 20 to 30%, but yeah, I kind of forgot about it. Aside from that, you either have it proc every 30 seconds or you proc it on 4 squats in the beginning. So that is also a choice for you to select. Personally, it really depends what sort of stage you're in. In the very later stages, people use 2 front lines. Some races use 3, 4. So it really depends, on your choices. Aside from that, we have the weapons. Now, this one probably has a couple of choices. One is the Lionheart's Lance. Personally, Drag is doing incredible amounts of damage, and you should sort of be buffing his ability to do damage, because his damage is more reliable in a sense. Like the buff you would be able to put on him usually works wonders. Now, the thing is, most of the time we worked about providing for Avril, but the buffs that Avril usually requires or does right now is not really that reliable in terms of armory. So we have to stray away and provide for another hero which benefits all the time. So in this one, we have every 3 active skills increases physical damage and attack speed for rogue heroes. That includes Drac. So pretty much like maybe 10 seconds into the battle, I have already 2 stacks on this on all the rogues, including Drac. So that is a pretty big boost in the very beginning of the battle. Aside from that, we have another bow which is increases all friendly rogues crit damage by 80% and increases damage against melee troops. You can change this to heroes as well by 20% for 30 seconds. So essentially, this starts from the very beginning, and this one is a scaling one. So essentially, as the battle goes on, 5 to 10 seconds, this one already is scaling to be pretty good. Now, I don't know about how huge this might become, but I might give it a shot a little bit more if I change it to melee units, or heroes rather, I do believe. I think it's this one. No, it's this one, melee heroes. So yeah, that really depends. If drag one shots the gladiators or stuff like that more often and faster, than this particular one. But this particular one provides buffs and bonuses against both melee, against heroes, whereas this one is just one buff in terms of his entire damage, and the other is specific. But again, that really depends. Aside from that, for a majority of the time, we use the Shadow Leopard's Blade. The thing about this one is that right now, the only mage really doing damage or considerable damage that would be very, meaningful for us is Avril. Now, I've seen people, make Ophidia do damage, make Tisafin do damage. Yeah, that there is a possibility for them to appear here and there. I mean, if you put a lot of resources into them, prisms, you have specific others, yeah, you can make them DPS, but essentially they don't do as much as Drag, they don't do as much as Lee, they don't do as much as Avril. And thus, having a weapon based for mages and necromancers, and even then, majority of, say, Avril's damage is in the backline, whereas this weapon is proccing debuffs in the front line. So it's not really that effective, or would be as effective as it would be over buffing your drag with more damage, if you understand what I mean. So that is the sort of thing that is sort of happening. So yeah, for weapons, I would likely just go with Lionheart's Lance, or if you wanna, feel frisky, you might as well try this against melee heroes. But that's of course for you to choose. Aside from that, we have armors. Now here are, I think, a couple of choices as well. One of them is the Fearsome Armor, or Red Wolf's Armor. At the start of the battle, inflict Fearsome Wolf on 2 random enemy melee troops, which is squads, increasing their damage taken by 45% and by an extra 20% from ranged heroes. So, the thing about ranged heroes, that is, I do believe, Avril, that is, I do believe, Tisafin, Ophidia, Arian, all that kind of stuff, right? So, essentially, they would increase in damage, but I don't know if this is damage that would buff Arcanate. Increasing their damage taken, yes, it buffs Arcanate damage. However, this one I'm not sure, but I do believe it might do the same. And thus, it kind of makes your Avril able to, even if you scratch that squad with Arcanate, you might as well do a lot of damage. Now, the only other armor that you might be able to use is the Shadow Leopard armor. But this is pretty situational, all because now majority of your mages and necromancers are scattered throughout the burst side, which means if it lands on, say, a necromancer like Gazel, which is somewhere in the middle, I guess, you're not gonna use this, say, buff with decreasing magical damage, or, increasing magical damage of all friendly mages and stuff like that as reliably as before. So it kind of drops off a little bit in value. So it's kind of hard to say you're, basing a very, very slight chance that you're gonna be able to use it properly right now. Whereas this one would always proc on 2 out of, say, 3 frontline squads versus the enemy. So if you get the stall side, it's highly likely you would be able to bypass it rather quite quick. So that is the choice you would have. And I think this RNG is just too huge for the sake of what this brings. But of course, this is kind of useless if you are facing burst versus burst. So you do have to be, or rather take note of this, that um, this one performs better burst versus burst. But at the same time, it really depends if you do land on it. Aside from that, this one performs better in terms of stall sides, both for physical damage dealers and, of course, magical, whereas this one is only for the magical ones. Aside from that, you have some debuffs, you have some pushbacks and stuff like that, but I don't really know if any of these armors are really that good. I mean, I might have to look around, check how these debuffs are being procced. I mean, they do have a lot of attack speed reductions, but it summons on melee troops, right? You don't really have core heroes around melee troops. And essentially, these debuffs don't really mean that much. And the new armors require a ranged troop and another melee troop, reducing physical resistance. Healing received. I was thinking about this armor as well a while back. But the thing is, I tried it a couple of times. I don't know if it really is that strong. Because the radius is 4.5, right? And we expand the area and we have what enemy melee units healing received. That also works on heroes, by the way. And the pet one is, I do believe, 6.5, right? 7.5. Now, the thing is, if it spawns on the squad near the Balrog, it's almost an instantaneous clap on literally the entire, stall side. But the thing is, if that lands on the back line, right, the back line, frontline squad, because it says random enemy melee troop. Now, if you have two, you're usually gonna land on a good one, right? Like more chances than not. If you have three, usually one is in the back line, so you really have like a 66% chance to land on a useful one, to not have that particular debuff in the back line, and 33% chance to really win or quickly clear a stall side. Whereas the other, 33% would be somewhere in the middle, which is not as incredibly useful. So, I don't know, man. It is kind of decent. You can debuff enemy Balrogs as well with this one, but yeah, I don't know. This is, to me, a little bit more reliable, but I might be trying this out a couple of times as well to see how it performs. But I think this one kind of takes the cake, and if not, you might want to give this a shot again. But of course, decreasing magical damage of enemy mages and necromancers within range by 55%. Of course, if you're fighting burst versus burst, you can just sneakily insert this and try to counter, your enemies, because this is also something you can use. But yeah, that is what I kind of use with the Armory and what I will be trying out in the near future. I mean, it's all kind of situational. These things can change in a matter of just one patch note. Like, even in the very near future, pets are coming out. They have different buffs, they have different debuffs. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something new. If you did, do hit that subscribe button. It would help me out a lot. So let's say if you wish to support me more than just watching my videos, I have made a Patreon page where you would be able to do just that. In return, I would be able to help you out more individually in terms of events, PvP formations, and stuff like that. So also, I would like to thank all of my patrons for the support. I really, really appreciate it for your subscriptions. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for watching. Take care and stay safe out there.